This video is ridiculously overdue. But if I'm being honest with you, I've been putting this video off. Why would I put off a video where I get to talk about all my favorite things and get you guys to know a little bit more about me? The best way I think I can describe it is there was a quote from a book, which if I can find a picture from the book, I will post it on screen, but it had something to do with talking about when you try to describe why you love someone or something, it's like trying to trap a butterfly wings where it's not the same thing as what it was originally. I guess what I'm trying to say with that clumsy metaphor is that by describing my favorite things to you, I don't want them to lose their luster or have you not get the impression of how much I love them just because I don't do a good enough job of describing them. So all that to say, here are my favorite TV shows and movies of all time. We'll first start with my movies because I have a couple that I really want to go in depth about here. My favorite movie of all time ever is La La Land. I think I've talked about this a little bit before, especially in streams. I watched La La Land for the first time my junior year of high school, and at that time I was kind of going through a process of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Applying to colleges, figuring out what SAT and ACT scores I needed to get into the school I wanted, and that's when I made a major shift from focusing on animation and wanting to become a storyboard artist to wanting to be a writer for live action movies and television. La La Land came to me at this time when I was so stressed about figuring out what it was that my dream actually was. I knew I had one, I knew I wanted to go somewhere and do something big and exciting, but I didn't really know how to approach that, which, can you blame me? I was 17 years old. Watching this movie, it struck me with something I didn't expect to find when I watched this movie, which was a sense that there are certain things that are more important than your dreams. The ending of La La Land is beautiful and ambiguous for so many reasons, and the film is obviously stunning because of its visuals, its performances, Damien Chazelle's writing and direction, and obviously the music. All of it is stunning and all of it is something to behold, but this movie for me reminded me that there's other things in life that are more important than those dreams, at least in my opinion, for myself, my own life, and this movie kind of gave that to me in a really heartbreakingly beautiful way, and I will forever cherish that lesson as I go forward. Although La La Land is now my favorite movie of all time, there was a very first cinematic love that I ever had, which is not in my Letterboxd top 4, and that is Beauty and the Beast, the original animated 1991 classic. How do I even begin to get into why I love this movie? First of all, the animation is stunning. If you're gonna talk about animation, wanting to study animation, or look at the classics and the greats, Glenn Keane's animation of the Beast, specifically in the transformation scene, is art. The story is timeless for so many reasons, but specifically because it allows you to realize that it's what's on the inside that is important. I genuinely do think this movie is one of the greatest stories ever told, and it focuses on love being about what's on the inside and not appearances, which is a lesson I guess I learned super early in life from this and has just really stuck with me and helped me to appreciate just life and people and always be trying to look for something deeper than the surface, not just what you get on the outside. Then we have Avengers Endgame, which will go down and will forever be the greatest movie theater experience of my entire lifetime. I saw this movie my freshman year of college. I bought tickets in advance, spent way too much money to see it in the best theater, the biggest theater, with the most people and the comfiest chairs. Seeing the conclusion to characters who had been in my life for 7-ish years at that point was like getting to see the way a friend's life goes, or getting to triumph with a friend, see their struggles, see their growth, see where they ultimately end up. This is partially why I love long-form storytelling so much, is because of the MCU and what it was able to accomplish, and Avengers Endgame being the pinnacle of that, being the cap on so many characters' stories, and being the conclusion to the Infinity Saga. It just will always hold a special place in my heart and a top ranking amongst my favorite movies. And I also think specifically this movie kind of reminded me of that nerdy kid I was back in middle school, that over the years I kind of shed that persona a little bit more as I began to be a little bit more extroverted and things like that. But getting to see this movie reminded me like just how far I had come, the same way the characters had grown so much, which is just making this video, which I meant to be casual, like way too deep. Next is the original Rocky, the American dream, both in the story of the film of Rocky Balboa's journey to become one of the greatest fighters in the world, and also the film and Sylvester Stallone's myth or journey, and it's one of the greatest underdog movies of all time. And now these aren't ranked specifically just because I all love them so much, but the last of them is Crazy Stupid Love. This movie is something that I love to talk to other people about. If you want to hear some more in-depth feelings, about this film from me. I just did a great episode of your favorite movies over at You and Reviews channel, which I'll link below, so that you can get maybe a little bit more of my love for it in a maybe more energized state than I am right now. But the thing I think is so special about this movie is the writing and the way that I identify now that this is such a well-written movie and that I want to make movies like this someday. Movies that are fun and light, but that give insight into the human experience and human relationships while also not having too many pretenses about what it is. Not that I don't love big Oscar baity movies, but stuff like this is really my bread and butter. All these different love stories interconnecting into one is something that I just treasure so much. So my others, I'm not going to go into as much depth, but I have a couple of honorable mentions. Even though I did talk about Avengers Endgame, two of my other favorite Marvel movies are Iron Man 3 and Captain America: The Winter Soldier. My favorite Aaron Sorkin movie, which is such a maybe weird thing to admit, but I've seen almost all of his movies, and he is easily my favorite screenwriter. I mean, I may or may not have bought these glasses because they look like his. Gotta channel some of the energy to get a job, okay? But Steve Jobs, I am a huge Apple fangirl. I always have been. I love the history of the company. I read Steve Jobs' entire biography. I've seen a lot of documentaries about Steve Jobs and even the really bad biopic with Ashton Kutcher. I'm sorry, he does look like a young Steve Jobs, but that doesn't mean he can play him or properly represent him. Michael Fassbender's iteration, paired with Aaron Sorkin's fast-paced words and the trilogy of Apple events, is so cool for a nerd like me who knows exactly what's going on at each point in time, and while also being kind of a study of Steve's relationship with his daughter, Lisa Brennan Jobs, whose book I have also read. I'm telling you, this stuff runs deep. I just absolutely loved this movie, and I was embarrassed for the Academy that it didn't win pretty much anything, but it is nonetheless my favorite. Another movie that really impacted me and kind of sent me on my mission of like analyzing movies the way I do now and studying the things I do in school is Fight Club. I saw Fight Club senior year of high school, and it was one of those movies I knew people always talked about, like first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club, but I didn't understand what it was about. Seeing it as a representation of masculinity in the modern era when everything is commercialized is just such a wild ride. Another movie I dearly love is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Jim Carrey was one of my favorite actors when I was younger because I saw him in The Mask, The Grinch, and this. And in this movie, he plays this wacky pet detective, and it also follows like the robbing of the Miami Dolphins, and Dan Marino is in it. Last for my movies, and I've got to throw this in there, and maybe it's the fact that I'm watching Teen Wolf right now, and maybe it's the fact that my Dylan O'Brien obsession is re-creeping up, but The Internship. That is the first movie that I just remember being hilariously blown away by. Having no expectations going in, not growing up with it, but just being absolutely struck by how funny it was, how freaking funny it was. For me, what makes that movie so great is all of the nerdy references. The fact that they play Quidditch, that they try to trick Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, that Charles Xavier is the guy at Stanford, which is just a whole funny trip. The entire scene at the strip club, which at the time I was way too young to watch, and just seeing these characters who are nerds who are just trying to get a job. I just love this movie. It's one I need to revisit really, really soon. So that kind of just sums up my movies. There's a lot of other movies that if I had to do like a top 25 ranking, I would probably do, but those are the ones that I felt most important to mention right now. TV shows are kind of where it gets tricky because there's certain parts of some of these TV shows I don't like and some parts of them that I love. For starters, I guess we'll go with my favorite show that's on the air currently, which is This Is Us. I've talked about it numerous times before, but I genuinely think it's one of the best written shows on television. And for those of you who don't know, it is created by Dan Fogelman, who is the screenwriter for Crazy Stupid Love. So those two kind of just go hand in hand. Another show that I first learned to love back in high school was Jane the Virgin. Jane, who is a rule follower to the day she dies, who is trying to just be the best for her family. That is something that I deeply, deeply identified with. Jane the Virgin, I have a complicated relationship with because after certain things happened in that show, I had to step away from it for a while because I was really pissed and I felt like the writing was cheap and it did a disservice to specific characters who I dearly love. I recently finished this series and realized just how much I love it. Then, obviously, it goes without saying, The Office and Parks and Recreation, and I put these two together because they're both mockumentaries with Michael Schur attached. But fun fact, I actually watched Parks and Rec before I watched The Office. When I was doing driver's ed, I would binge episodes of Parks and Recreation non-stop. If you've ever done driver's ed classes online, you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can move on to the next lesson in order to really make sure you like look around the site, but it doesn't actually check if you're staying there. So I would just create a new tab and watch Parks and Recreation, and it was awesome, and I will always love that show. But when I watched The Office, I fell so deeply for Jim and Pam. I have such a thing for couples that just, it takes them a long time to get where they're going, but they finally get there. Obviously, Friends has to make this list as well. If you guys watched my Friends reunion review, you saw all my sappy things I had to say about Friends, so there's no need to reiterate it here. What We Do in the Shadows is the funniest show I have ever seen. And I say that not trying to get rid of The Office, but What We Do in the Shadows is the funniest concept for a show, a mockumentary that focuses on vampires, and the comedy that is both written and acted and timed in this series is too good, and obviously it showcases my love of Taika Waititi in this mix, so it had to be included. Then Mindhunter, which, if you know, I've ranted and raved a little bit about this series because it has been canceled, and I say that with the question mark because I read a story yesterday that David Fincher is currently in talks with Netflix about a season 3, which I am praying we get. Jonathan Groff playing this FBI agent who is trying to start the psychological department at the FBI to investigate serial killers. If you're a true crime junkie like me, you have to watch this show. I beg you, please watch it. Please, just so I can get a 3rd season. Please. Then a show I haven't gotten to talk much about, but I'm so excited for the 3rd season of, is American Crime Story. I watched the first one, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, and it just absolutely blew me away. I am definitely a fan of biopic type stuff, but what I love about that series is the way that Ryan Murphy is able to kind of just make you question what you know about something that was so public. Then we have Dickinson, which I know I've talked about before, but I love the ahistorical trend of period piece things we have going on now in our society. We've got Bridgerton now, we had Hamilton, we have all this stuff, but Dickinson is easily my favorite, and it could just be because of Hailee Steinfeld, and it could just be because Hailee Steinfeld and I have the same birthday, but I just love how creative and funny this show is and how self-aware and self-mocking it is of the time period. Lastly, and most recently, Game of Thrones. This is a series I once swore I would never watch because I missed it in its initial run on television, and people seemed disappointed with the last season. But I can stand here today watching every episode of all 8 seasons of the show and tell you that I think it's one of the greatest things we have ever gotten as a television series. It is genuinely one of the best shows ever, and I can say that even knowing what happens in the end, even having my certain gripes with the endings. But honestly, I think the last season was super overhated, and that's something I intend to talk about more in the future. So now as I get to the end of the list, I realize just how little it actually covers of my movie watching experience and the way I enjoy things. So I definitely recommend you to go to my Letterboxd page for the movie side of things. Right now, I'm trying to figure out a better outlet for talking about my favorite shows because I don't like to mix those with my Letterboxd reviews. I don't know why. It's kind of dumb, but it kind of is just how I work. I just don't like to do my shows on Letterboxd. I would love to hear some of your guys' favorites, or if some of my favorites are also yours. I definitely feel like this maybe gives you a better peek into the kind of content I like. Thank you guys so much for sticking with this video. I feel like right now at the time of filming that I'm kind of fumbling over my words and again, not expressing the true extent of how I love these movies and shows. But thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps me out. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I would love to have you get to see more of my content so that we can chat more and more about movies and TV shows that we love. Thank you guys so much again for 1,000 subscribers. I genuinely am so sorry that this took me so long to do, but I hope you enjoyed it. And now, thank you for 1.2 thousand followers. That is insane. I have 1,204 subscribers right now at the time of filming this. That is wild. Thank you guys truly from the bottom of my heart. Have an absolutely amazing day or night, and I will see you in my very next video. Bye, guys.